Okay, and what I want to do in this video is talk about our second factor of production, which is labor. Okay, and this is just somebody that is working for somebody else, essentially. Now, there's no order that you have to put the factors of production in. All we're saying is that invariably for any product, be it a capital good or a consumer good being produced, some combination of all of them must be involved in order to produce those goods and services. So like we always like to start off with in these videos, we talk about the definition of what we're discussing in the video, in this case, labor. So labor is all human effort other than enterprise. Enterprise is the idea, and we'll come to that in 2 videos' time, which is used in the production of goods and services. So for the visual learners, we see here that we have people working in a factory. So what is labor? Labor is all human effort, okay, other than enterprise, which is used in the production of what? Of goods and services. That's what labor is. Now, you must forgive me, I am Irish and I'm also a rugby fan, so I decided to put an Irish rugby player in here, Jack McGrath, and just to say that labour is someone who works for somebody else. So he works for the Irish Rugby Football Union, the IRFU. That's who he works for, and for Leinster Rugby currently, at least as this video is being recorded. And what does he work for? Well, we said that all the factors of production have particular names that we could give the money received by the owners of those factors of production. And in this case, the reward to labour is the wage. And that is actually quite important because you own your own labour. So I own my own labour. Now, I'm a teacher by profession. I am teaching now. I have classes. But I am the one that owns my labour. So in a way, I am selling the use of my labour to the school that I'm working in. And that's an unusual way of putting it. But that's exactly what's happening when it comes to factors of production. You're selling the use of your factor of production. And in my case, I am selling the use of teaching services. Now, just to get a quick little kind of discussion on what the supply of labour is. So what we're saying is the amount of labour in a country, the supply of labour, how much labour can be employed, okay, depends on a few things. Not all of them are included here, but I just decided to give you 3 quick ones. So to give you a kind of an insight or try to develop your thinking when we're thinking about why people work, essentially. Now, the very first one is the wage rate. So we know that the economic reward to labour is called the wage. And the wage is the amount of money that you receive per hour, per day, per month, per year, whatever, per week. It's irrelevant, the time frame. But the idea is I always kind of start this off in my classroom by saying, who would like to wash my car for 1 cent? And invariably you get some people saying yes. And I remember I asked one student why. There's no money in it. And he said, well, hopefully you'll give me better marks in the exam. Now that's smart, that's intelligent. And I promised him it wouldn't work, but he's at least intelligent enough to work out that it's not always the most direct reward that you get, but such is life. So the wage rate, so if I said to you, would you wash my car for 1 cent? You'd most likely say no. If I said to you, would you wash my car for $1 billion US, I would be shocked if anybody said no. So the higher the wage rate, the more willing people are to work, and as such, the greater the supply of labour. So if you have a couple and one person works in the household, and then one adult, let's say, works in the household, and you have a couple of 2 adults, and the other person stays at home, well then what happens if the wage rate in the country goes incredibly high? Well, that person that was staying at home might actually say, do you know what, I'm going to join you in the workforce now. So an increase in the wage rate will increase the amount of labour in the country, the supply of labour, not the number of people per se, although it certainly would encourage immigration. But what we're saying is if we assume that the population was fixed, a higher wage rate would encourage more people to seek full-time employment in the marketplace, and as such a higher wage would most likely increase the supply of labour, and also a lower wage would most likely decrease the supply of labour, because the reward to labour, i.e. the wage rate, which is exactly what we're talking about, would be reduced. The next thing is the population. So of course, if the population increases through higher birth rates, lower death rates, and or immigration, the supply of labour will increase. There's more people that are willing and able to work at every wage rate. So we'd have an increase in the supply of labour. And the last one are income tax levels. Now, as I said, these are only 3. There's probably 20 if you want to get really, really technical about it. But if I said to you, who would be willing to wash my car for $100 billion US, most likely everybody says yes. But then I say, hold on a second, but the tax rate is 100%. Well, if the tax rate increases, then the reward to labour, i.e. the take-home wage that the owners of the factor of production, the labourers, receive, is lower. It's reduced. So the higher the income tax levels, the lower the supply of labour. And conversely, the lower the income tax levels, the higher the supply of labour. Okay, now the labour supply, or the supply of labour, is measured in man hours. Okay, so it's how many hours are worked per day, per week, per month, per year. Again, the time frame is irrelevant. So I always like to do this in class. I have two countries, country A and country B. And country A has only 2 workers, whereas country B has 3 workers. So don't forget, country A, 2 workers, country B, 3 workers, because the numbers are going to be covered. And then I say, which country has the greatest supply of labour? Well, country B is 3 workers, country A is 2, so everybody says it's country B, and I say, no, you're wrong. I say, we cannot possibly know. How? Because labour is measured in man hours. What if I were to say to you that each worker in country A works 50 hours a week, whereas each worker in country B works 30 hours a week, and I pose the question again, which country has the greatest labour supply? Well, if we look at this, 2 times 50 is 100 hours, and 3 times 30 is 90 hours, and as such, country A even has the higher supply of labour, even though it only has 2 workers. So try just to keep that in mind. Not overly important. What is incredibly important, however, is what I'm going to talk about. In a modern economy, the main feature of labour is its degree of specialisation. Now, it doesn't have to be per se a modern economy, but it has to be a big economy, because if there's only one person, you're on your own on a desert island, like the Robinson Crusoe example, well, you have to do everything for yourself, and as such you can't specialize. If there are, let's say in the island of Manhattan in New York, I mean, I don't know, there's like 9 million, there could be more, there could be less, forgive me, but let's say we're in an economy with 10 million people in it. Well, that allows for greater specialisation. An economy with 50 million people allows for greater specialisation. And I suppose, again, it's important to know what we're talking about before we talk about it. So when we're talking about specialisation, we have to know what specialisation is. And specialisation is concentrating on performing a specific task. Now, this is important. Why? Because each worker concentrates on one job, or, 3 or 4 jobs, certain jobs, not trying to do everything themselves. And then, therefore, these workers develops their skills for this job, and as such becomes more productive. And I hope you can see where I'm going on this. With each worker engaging in specialisation, each worker becomes more productive and more is produced. When more is produced, more can be consumed, the whole country becomes richer. I always ask the question, particularly in secondary school or in, DP economics or MYP economics. Like I always say, what's my job? And the students say, you're a teacher. And then I say, okay, but be more specific about that. Am I a French teacher? And they obviously say, no, you're an economics teacher. And I say, let's be even very specific about this. What is my absolute job? And my absolute job seems to be an IB DP economics teacher. And that's pretty much what I do. So the idea is that I concentrate not just on economics per se, but on teaching economics. And again, not just on teaching economics, but on teaching the IB curriculum for DP economics. So there's a massive amount of specialization in that. And the theory becomes, and I hope it is true, at least in my case for my students' benefit, is that I become better at doing that job through that concentration on the one specific task, through specialization. And if everybody does that, and therefore we engage in trade, more is produced. So it's the benefits of specialization and trade. Now, not to get off point, but that also includes international trade, because certain countries are very talented at producing certain types of things. The idea of your Swiss watches, your Fabergé eggs, your Russian babushka dolls, all of these kind of things have a kind of a traditional thing with a traditional ability, a traditional niche within each country that is passed on from generation to generation. And as such, if countries or individuals in certain countries specialize in doing something, and they're allowed to trade with individuals who specialize in doing something else, producing something else in other countries, well, that allows for total consumption in the entire world to increase through total world production increasing also. So that's labor.